speaking of taking things wrong, um,
What?
we have. I know some of my segues make no sense, but that makes them all the more fun. Speaking of movies that aren't that great, we have Insidious Chapter 2 up next, which pretty much follows directly after the first Insidious, in which the medium woman played by Lynn Shay had been. Well, she died at the end of the first movie. So they're trying to figure out, they being the police, try to figure out who killed her. The family tries to move on. The father, Patrick Wilson's character, has been acting a bit odd. The wife may not necessarily trust him. There's some strange happenings going on again. And they believe that there's more spirits from the father coming after them. And I'll be honest, I actually like this movie a bit more than the first one, and I'm not entirely sure why.
What the fuck?
I know, but that is, I actually just watched this earlier today, but I actually did, I did love the movie, and I still think it's a somewhat below average movie, but I do think I found it more enjoyable. But before I try to piece that together, let's hear your praises, Chucky.
Well, look, I still think this movie's decent, but for anyone out there who hasn't watched our discussion from the first movie, I actually really liked the first movie. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think it's a super creepy movie. And even though I'm not someone who dislikes when they make sequels, I feel like the original movie would have been better off not having any sequels. And that's because this movie goes into more about the what do they call the character? The Black Bride character.
I think it's just a woman and it's something I forget.
Yeah, I found that character incredibly creepy from the first movie, and it was mainly because there was just so much mystery around the character. Like, you know nothing really about that character, and now to bring it here, okay, it's a cross-dressing guy with mummy issues. I mean, it doesn't necessarily ruin the character. I didn't really care for that explanation for the character. I still find the character creepy despite it, but I don't know. I feel like it less is more in that case. I mean, I've seen all the Insidious movies at the theater except for the first one, which sucks because the first one's the best one. But all the other, there's no bad Insidious movies. They just range from to good, and I think this one is still probably the second best in the series. I know some people actually kind of prefer the third one over this one. The third one's very similar in terms of enjoyment to this one, at least for me. But I think the reason why I still kind of like this one over the third is because this one still has so much more ties to the first movie. And in a way, this movie does a decent job of kind of tying things in with events that happened in the first movie. Like, when you watch the first movie, like, things like where they hear knocks on their doors and their doors opening at certain points, and I mean, you can just play that off as, okay, something supernatural is happening, and, we see movies all the time where a door will open and, it's not really for any reason, but when you watch this second movie, they actually show it's actually for a reason. Either that or they just cleverly came up with these ideas that seem to seamlessly integrate itself into events from the first movie, which is kind of impressive, but at the same time, like I said, less is more, and now whenever I watch that first movie, I'm gonna know things that happened from, that we see in the second movie, and I don't know, it's good, but also annoying.
Yeah, I have to say, I was somewhat impressed with the way they sort of tied in the small things. I did like them. A lot of this movie, well, not a lot, but they throw some flashbacks into back when Patrick Wilson's character was a kid dealing with his own issues. And I thought it was really interesting the way they went through this story. I mean, I guess my main problem is I'm just not blown away by any of it. I was somewhat bored toward the beginning. Things picked up around maybe the halfway mark or so. And I thought there were some legitimately creepy scenes. But then after toward the end, I started feeling my interest drain a bit. But I did want to mention one scene that I did particularly enjoy, being the kid sleeping on the can on his tree scene. You know, when he hears the voice and he assumes it's his brother. It's not. And you just see it, that other side of the can string leading into the closet. It's creepy. It may not have the best conclusion, but I thought it was a decently creepy scene. So I guess kudos to that.
Yeah, I like the house in the movie. Like it's just a creepy house to be in as well, especially when they add all those extra things like the red lighting. I mean, you just walk down the stairs and it's just all red, and yeah, I mean, you've got the creepy "Don't you dare" lady and "Don't you dare."
I actually thought that was somewhat laughable the first time it happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not aware, the lady that plays that character, she is the same actress from Curse of Chucky, the sister that is having like their lesbian relationship.
So you always have these interesting tidbits.
Yeah. I don't really know her from anything else, but obviously we both like Curse of Chucky, so we'll know her from that. I think this movie has decent actors in it. I mean, Patrick Wilson's pretty good. I think Rose Byrne's a good actress. Lin Shaye's good. I think it's great to see like older actors get bigger roles in movies who weren't necessarily really famous people. And yeah, I mean, I like the dynamic between the two ghost hunter type guys, Tucker and what's the other guy's now?
Sparks, I think.
Specs, that's it. Yeah. A lot of Australian flavour in the movie too, because it's directed by an Australian, it's written by an Australian, it's got at least, to my memory, 3 different Australian actors in it.
Yeah, I just thought it was sort of funny, that argument. Rather than safe word, the one guy thought it should be unicorn, and he somehow thought unicorn would be easy to bring up in the conversation, which I thought was
quesadilla.
Yeah, I thought that was like, I mean, I can much more understand quesadilla than unicorn. It just struck me as rather amusing.
I agree that I could probably work quesadilla in better, but still, I mean, I've never in my life anyone heard say, "Hey, it's quesadilla time." I mean,
yeah, that example may not have been the best example.
Yeah. Maybe a taco or something if you want to go with some sort of Mexican food, but
that actually does lead me to one other thing I want to give this movie credit for. I thought the scene with the other medium type guy, Carl. I thought the scene when he was talking to Patrick Wilson's.
Yeah. I've also got the note that's like probably my favorite creepy scene in the movie, where he's doing the smiles and stuff.
Yeah, like that, and there's a lot of tension in that scene. I think it's a very well done scene. I think it's somewhat ridiculous. Oh, he's holding a knife, big surprise. But I do think overall that's a pretty tense scene.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the highlight scenes for me in the movie. Even though I'm not necessarily hugely fond of the whole possession type thing overall that's happening, I think that scene, that's a very good scene.
Yeah, there were times when I was a bit reminded of, I think it was the Amityville Horror remake. I mean, it's obviously that movie's a lot more aggressive in its nature, but just the father being possessed and acting aggressive toward the family. So it wasn't unique, but I was just reminded of that.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention is I thought they did and sometimes movies do a horrible job at this, but I thought this movie did a pretty good job, towards that opening scene of having actors and actresses that really do feel like they resemble younger versions of their older characters in the movie. Obviously, I have to assume Lin Shay did voiceovers for that actress at the beginning, playing her younger self, but, you know, I can see these people growing up to look like these older people.
Yes.
Oh, come on, what's wrong with that comment?
To be honest, I almost never noticed things like that. I remember that came up in the, I think it was It Chapter 2 conversation.
Yeah.
And I also remember not really noticing it then either.
Well, yeah, I thought they did a good job casting in that movie in terms of getting people who could kind of resemble those kids. But, I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched It Chapter 2 since I saw it that once in the theaters, which is very surprising.
Yeah, it's funny because it's the exact same with me.
Yeah, but the thing is, I gave that movie, like, the first chapter a 10 out of 10, so you would have thought I'd be all over the second one, watch it multiple times. I've watched the first chapter, like, 5-6 times at least. I haven't bothered to watch the second one since the theater. And that was, over a year ago? I've got it on Blu-ray, I just don't watch it. So...
Well, that's deeply encouraging.
Just goes to show how disappointing that second one was. Even though it's not technically a bad movie, it's just disappointing compared to the first. Anyways, back to Insidious 2. I still like this movie enough, but I do think it takes a little bit of a step back from the first movie. I think the first movie is just really creepy, because we don't really know too much about all these creepy characters, and this one just explains too much for me, to the point where it kind of takes the air out of some of those characters. So I'm going to give this one a 7. I still find it to be a decent movie, just, yeah, it just doesn't exactly take the right turns for me.
Yeah, so I don't think this is significantly better or worse. Well, I think it's a little better, but it's not significantly different from the first movie. It does feel almost a little more traditional in its the way they try to scare the audience. It just felt almost more Hollywood streamlined type thing, type feeling for it. It's okay, I guess. It's just there's very few times in the story I was actually really interested. I thought the whole mystery behind, hey, what's this malevolent spirit? No, I thought that was maybe a bit more of the interesting portions, but even then, it didn't entirely grab me. So I think I gave the first Insidious a 5.5, and I probably rounded that up to a 6. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. So I like it a bit more. It's still another movie I really enjoyed. But hey, if I'm lucky, maybe Insidious 3 will be what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
My hopes are not high.